So I was watching a Burback video from Eddie Burback and his brother, as one does, and I noticed something. Throughout a certain video, he kept mentioning the big three. In this video, when there was a group of things, they would simply say the number, or just list the things in it. But if it involved three, they would say the big three. It's such a little thing that nobody else on the planet would have caught, but I wondered, why? I'd bet everyone watching this video has heard the phrase, the big three, whether you're in the music field, anime spaces, or just having a regular old conversation. I'd gamble this channel that you, yes you, have had a conversation where either you or the person you were talking to mentioned the big three. Even the very small minority that might not know what I'm talking about will pick up on the concept. The big three is, well, the best three of something. Usually they will stand far and away better than everything below them, but most commonly you'll see people stick the title to pieces of media. The most popular examples being Bleach, One Piece, and Naruto for anime, and Kendrick, J. Cole, and Drake for music. Well, I'm here to tell you that phrase is useless. There is no big three. Its entire logic is flawed the minute you realize no one ever talks about the big four or big seven or any other big. This title is usually to try and show the three best of something, but falls apart due to best being a 99% subjective idea. Though there is one example that actually applies. Before we explain why it's a useless term for everything else, we need to explain the one and only right application of it. This is, of course, the big three of anime and manga: Bleach, One Piece, and Naruto. To properly explain this, we're going back in time to the 80s when Shonen Jump, the most popular Japanese magazine and most popular place to read manga, was in its golden age. Titles still popular to this day were publishing their first chapters. Such titles as Fist of the North Star, JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, and Dragon Ball. Shonen Jump was at the top of the world, ranked as the most popular magazine and the go-to place for all manga. It continued like this until the late 90s/early 2000s when many of the golden era manga reached their conclusion. With it came the worst sales Shonen Jump had ever seen. Their spot as the most popular magazine was on the line and bankruptcy was around the corner. It was looking like the end of the magazine. That was until three mangas, all releasing around the same time, garnered hype that rivaled the peak of the golden age. These being, of course, Bleach, One Piece, and Naruto. All were inspired by mangas of the past and brought the art form to new generations. These three were officially given the title the Big Three, not because they were the best written. They were given this title because they saved Shonen Jump. If you take these three mangas out at the time, Shonen Jump completely collapses. Even taking one will deal major damage to their standings. Just like a triangle being the strongest shape for its ability to maintain shape, these three are known as the Big Three for their ability to maintain and save the industry. With that out of the way, it's time to talk about why the Big Three will never apply again. There is an example of this within anime and manga, but before we talk about that, I think it's time to talk about the second most popular version of the Big Three. I've definitely said those words too many times. So if you haven't been living under a rock for the last 6 months, I'm sure you've heard people mention the big three of rap. This being Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole, and Drake. Now the reason they're held above everyone else differs per artist. Drake is there because he's the most popular, Kendrick is there because he's the best, and J. Cole is there because, This leads to the problem. There is no consistency here, especially when you take recent events into consideration.
Trying to strike a chord and it's probably A minor.
As we reach the conclusion of the beef, you'll find many people trying to replace Drake and J. Cole in the Big Three, or flat out saying there is no Big Three. As we saw in our previous example, this isn't how it should work. The Big Three should be a concrete structure that falls apart when you take out one piece of it. As much as I love one of these guys, if you take all three of them out of the rap industry, it's far from failing. A lot worse, and a little better if one of them disappeared, but still thriving. Unlike Shonen stance without the Big Three. I think people try giving this artificial title because it makes their favorite artist seem all the more important. In this case, they take the most successful artist, the best, and then add in their favorite to make them seem like they're the best of the best. Hell, you will likely see someone do any combination to try and squeeze in their favorite. This title's meaningless. Nothing is holding any three artists above the rest, let alone no one can agree nor prove why any three should be held in higher regard. Unlike the manga trio, people try to base these three on talent. And since that's super subjective, it implodes on itself the minute you think about it for an extended amount of time. I dislike when people try to claim there's a Big Three rap artist, but I get it. With minimal thinking, yeah, it kind of makes sense. Doesn't work, but regardless. However, next Next, we're going to be talking about my least favorite application of the big three. The one that makes zero sense and completely kills all validation for the phrase. Hopefully you remember the real big three because attached to it is a disease trying to use it as a vessel to infect more and more people. I know that's a dramatic description, and I really have nothing else to know. I'm just a dramatic person. Anyway, I'm here to tell you about the new big three, the most nonsensical use of the phrase. After the success of the big three of manga, the industry prospered. Hundreds of popular manga, anime, and more spawned and created an indestructible fandom. Though this also came with a lot of newer, younger fans. These newer fans heard talk of the big three and believed it was a title given to the best manga of the time, and tried to apply it to the newer titles or replace the originals without knowing the history and meaning of it. Now, it's not hurting anyone. There's nothing wrong with people doing this, and I don't want to come off as some gatekeeper. It's nothing more than wrong terminology, and I simply wanted to make a fun little video about it. Anyway, similarly to the last example, but to a larger scale, there's nothing concrete here. Hell, this time there's not even a baseline. You'll see people say the new big three is JJK, My Hero Academia, Demon Slayer, or Chainsaw Man, Black Clover, Boruto, or any mix of any current manga or anime. It's simply an excuse for people to name their top three and slap the word big in front of it to make it seem like it's concrete and beyond an opinion. I called this my least favorite application because of this. Also because it follows right after the real big three, but doesn't stick to its criteria or circumstances. Shonen is now never going away. It's not like the early 2000s. Shonen is nowhere even close to bankruptcy. Even if you take away all its big hitters, there are too many other series going strong and pulling in millions of dollars. Also factoring in the immense popularity of anime around the world and merchandise, and you realize an indestructible industry has been created. Meaning there is no need for a new big three. Alright, I think I've made my point very clear. The big three is a vapid term only used in misguided ways. But this does lead to one last question. Why? Why is this the terminology everyone defaults to using? Why not the big two or big seven? Well, I think I have an answer for this, but it does rely on speculation and assumptions. I am no psychologist, so you'll just have to trust me on this. I believe the phrase is prime example of pattern-seeking brain. I'm not breaking any new ground by telling you that our brains naturally seek out patterns for comfort and avoid the unexpected. Remember this while I throw some examples at you. Why is it whenever someone asks you to list your favorite things, it's always in certain intervals? You'll be asked your top 10, top 5, top 3, and just straight up singular favorite. Of course, I bet many of you can think of outliers, but don't lie to me and say the majority doesn't involve these numbers. If you go onto YouTube or any other social media platform, you'll see only top 10, top 5, and top 3. Hell, think about competition/events. You ever think there's a reason it's always bronze, silver, and gold, literally giving the top 3 a pedestal above the rest? Now again, I'm no expert who can tell you exactly why our brains are like this. All I can do is point it out to you and allow you to make your own connections. Now, this would probably just lead you to ask why it's not the big one or big 10. I think the answer is pretty simple. One would literally just be your favorite and not a list, and all the other options are too long. 3 is the perfect number for our brains. It fits our established patterns, and it's the perfect length where you don't have to sit and consider what makes the rankings for an exacerbated amount of time. I also think this image is doing a lot of carrying for the phrase. It's really nothing more than that. The big 3 is just the easiest way for someone to make their opinions seem more concrete. I hope this video has taught you a little something. Hopefully next time someone tells you about the big 3, you can tell them how meaningless the term is, about its long history, and just by saying it they appeal to their dumb